This is Christopher John Björkness. It is April 5th, 2023. There are a number of amazing parallels between the First World War and World War III, which is ongoing at the moment. Both wars involved the destruction of major empires. In the First World War, the Ottoman Empire was imploded to create attacks on Armenians and to free up the land of Palestine for the creation of a Jewish homeland. Just prior to World War III, the Soviet Empire was broken apart. This freed up Ukraine for a Jewish homeland, and it created a conflict between Armenians and Azerbaijanis, which is leading to the ethnic cleansing of Armenians. Both wars were financed by America. Both wars were predicted by prominent individuals. Jewish arms merchants have been heavily involved in both wars. Parvis was involved in arming the Ottoman Turks who committed genocide against the Armenians. Ukraine and Israel have heavily armed Azerbaijan to attack Armenians and are military allies with Azerbaijan. World War I, one of the aims of it was to create a Jewish Jerusalem. World War III, one of the stated aims, is to create a heavenly Jerusalem in Ukraine. Turkey has played a key role in both wars. Turkey ruled the Ottoman Empire, and Turkey has subverted NATO's interests in defeating Russia in Russia's attacks on the Ukraine. This has had the effect of prolonging both wars. Both wars, peace was continually obstructed. There were not serious peace talks in either war. Pan-Slavism is playing a major role in World War III as Russia claims that Ukraine does not exist as a nation, but is instead part of the Russian Pan-Slavic Empire. Same forces instigated World War I when there was a conflict between the Pan-Germans of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, who received the aid of Kaiser Wilhelm and the German Empire as a facet of Pan-Germanism. And the Tsar employed Pan-Slavism with Yugoslavia and Serbia especially to foment that war. Same things are happening today. Pan-Turkism also played a major role in the First World War and is playing a major role in World War III, where Azerbaijan and Turkey are attacking Armenian sovereignty based on the mythology of Pan-Turkism. The World War I was a major success for world Jewry. It freed up Palestine. It generated the Balfour Declaration. But Jews did not want to go to Palestine. If this one certain set of plans to create a heavenly Jerusalem in Ukraine is fulfilled, there may likewise be another instance where Jews do not want to move to the heavenly Jerusalem of Ukraine, and there may be efforts to force them to do so by generating anti-Semitism in Russia, America, and perhaps by having Iran attack Israel. The Azerbaijanis and Iranians are coming into conflict in World War III, and there are predictions in the Zohar and Sefer Zerubbabel which anticipate the idea that King Shiroi of Iran will attack the Jewish people, and that may be used to motivate Jews to move from Palestine to the heavenly Jerusalem in Ukraine. This heavenly Jerusalem that I'm referring to is the dream of a man who calls himself Igor Berkut. His birth name was Igor Gecko. he forecast that the Ukrainians have a massive population of people who contribute nothing of value to society and should be eliminated, and that when this elimination takes place, there will be space for a heavenly Jerusalem in southern Ukraine, where the Khazarian Empire used to be. The Khazars converted to Judaism, and many Ashkenazi Jews bear a large percentage of Khazarian and European blood. Mr. Berkut wrote 2 books, Brat and Brat 2. Brat is Russian for brother. Vladimir Putin appears on the cover of Brat 1, and Barack Obama appears on the cover of Brat 2, Brother 2. Obama did nothing when Russia invaded Ukraine and created an insurgency, invaded Crimea and created an insurgency in the Donbass in Ukraine. Obama also allowed Putin to make major moves into the Arctic and did nothing to obstruct that. Russia was heavily involved in the coup d'etat. There's also proof that the United States was involved in the coup d'etat in Ukraine. So it was obviously a setup by both sides to create what has become World War III in Ukraine, where Russia launched a major unprovoked attack on Ukraine. Mr. Berkut was on board with Putin and his Novorussia campaign to create a new Russia in Ukraine. This new Russia would be in Crimea and the Donbass region and would afford Jewry protection from the Russians on those fronts. This war would also weaken the Ukrainians, and we can see that this area of heavenly Jerusalem is being destroyed by Russia. It will need to be reconstructed, and that will provide an opportunity, should it work out that way, for Jewry to make major moves into that area. Ukrainian children are being sent around the world. Russia is taking Ukrainian orphans into Russia. Ukrainian women of childbearing age have fled Ukraine. Ukrainian men of breeding age are being slaughtered and wiped out. The population is being decimated. There are no serious peace talks on either side. Both sides have made peace arrangements impossible. This is very similar to what happened between Germany and the Allies in World War I, where the war was greatly prolonged unnecessarily. And Henry Ford was told that that was by design, that the Jewish elite had complete control over how long the war would last. When it would end, they had the ability to end it any time that they wanted to. And I will show you where Ford said that and where Ford was paraphrased in that regard. First, let's take a look at some of the things that Igor Berkut was saying leading up to the Ukraine war.
У этой проблемы, важной, казалось бы, нерешаемой, есть решение, есть ответ. Называется он «Небесный Иерусалим». В дальнейший термин «Небесный Иерусалим» я буду использовать так же, как «Новый Иерусалим», «Новая земля». Но чтобы было понятно вашим зрителям, что все это обозначает одну и ту же территорию, один и тот же проект. В главе 21 книги Откровения Иоанна Богослова, которая является последней книгой Нового Завета, сказано, что богоизбранный и богоспасаемый народ обретет землю Нового Иерусалима, на которой после этого будет продолжить свой путь к счастью и к процветанию. По нашему мнению, Земли Нового или Небесного Иерусалима расположены на юге Украины. Это 5 областей. Это Днепропетровская, Запорожская, Херсонская, Николаевская и Одесские области. Именно на территории этих областей в дальнейшем будет создан.
My interpretation of the Kabbalistic imagery, which appears in Berkut's presentation, is that the beautiful woman represents Shekhinah, or Lilith, and in occult Kabbalah, Lilith and Shekhinah are ultimately the same female goddess of the moon. She is pouring out the waters of primordial chaos, which is symbolic of the transition of the ages from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, as described in Luke chapter 22, verses 7 to 13. This signals the arrival of the new heavens and the new earth and the new heavenly Jerusalem. In Kabbalah, the goal is to lift up earthly Jerusalem to the heavenly Jerusalem in the new age of the world to come, Olam Haba. So Kabbalistically, my interpretation of what is being portrayed is that Shekhinah, the goddess of Malkut, is raising Malkut, the earth, to the heavenly Jerusalem as we transition into the age of Aquarius, in which there will be a new heavens and a new earth.
В той же 21 главе сказано, что евреи всей земли в основании небесного Иерусалима соберут богатства, накопленные ими за всю предыдущую жизнь. Но что такое богатство, описанное в Новом Завете? Что это в современном мире? Это инвестиции, технологии, это инфраструктура, это интеллектуальная собственность, это передовая наука. Именно все это ожидает в будущем землю Нового Иерусалима.
My Kabbalistic interpretation of what Berkut is describing is the ripening of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil at the end of the 6 days of creation, the 6,000 years of creation, which heralds the world to come, the new heavens and the new earth of Isaiah, and the new Jerusalem of Revelation chapter 21 and also chapter 3, I believe. He is portraying the era in which Jewry is slated to become gods by employing knowledge of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which becomes kosher at the end of the age and safe for Jewry to consume. This will enable Jews to breed 600,000 immortal androgynes to populate this new heavenly Jerusalem when Malkut is lifted up and becomes a heavenly world. It should also be noted that the goddess Shekhinah, or Lilith, or the Canaanite goddess Asherah, as she's called in the Old Testament, is a prostitute goddess and is incredibly beautiful, especially in the form of Lilith, who is a succubus who enters men's dreams to collect their nocturnal emission.
Вот заголовок. Нам нужен новый Бен-Гурион. Вот такой, пожалуйста, заголовок. Небесный Иерусалим. Самое интересное, что я считаю, произошло в январе этого 2017 года, когда первый пароход с переселенцами из Хайфы приплыл в Одессу, и первые 183 еврейских переселенца приехали на Украину, чтобы строить здесь. Мы решили сразу же поехать в Цфат, туда, где 2000 лет назад в горах Галилеи прятался великий рав Шимон бар Иохай. Там, где он со своими учениками написал великую книгу Заар, мы спустились в пещеру и присели на камни. Из узких окон, вырубленных в стенах, струился свет. Вдруг, внезапно, из-под земли раздались прерывистые звуки шафара. Они, как огненная меркава, подняли нас над землей и снова опустили на землю. Это было как чудо. И мы все превратились в одну.
Давайте все-таки вернемся к Украине. И здесь крайне любопытно, почему именно эта территория была выбрана еврейским народом для нового Иерусалима.
Но прежде всего так сложилось исторически. Как вы помните, именно на этой территории 400 лет существовал Великий Хазарский Каганат. И 400 лет на этих землях существовало иудейское государство. Кроме того, существует историческая преемственность, связь времен. Как вы знаете, с 1924 года по 1944 год советским правительством рассматривался вопрос создания еврейской советской республики в Крыму. А это рядом. И, как вы знаете, только конфликт новообразованного Израиля с СССР поставил на этом проекте крест. А так все шло к тому, что в Крыму будет еврейская автономия или еврейская советская республика. Это первое. Второе – это военная причина. Мы все знаем, что Израилю постоянно угрожает военная опасность со стороны соседних стран. Сегодня их население больше, чем в 10 раз выше населения Израиля. Мало того, со временем, возможно, и их военная мощь вырастет не только как человеческий потенциал, но и технический. Поэтому, если будет существовать отдельная другая территория, но не так далеко, а так, чтобы, например, ракеты среднего радиуса действия достигали, то совершенно бессмысленно будет атаковать Израиль, вот маленькое государство Израиль, понимая, что недалеко на севере существует территория в 7 раз больше, чем сегодняшний Израиль, несомненно, более экономически мощная, с гораздо большим населением, которая в случае чего может дать агрессору ощутимый и болезненный ответ. Следующая причина – это географическая. Хочу сказать, что, давайте так, помните, каким фиаско закончилась еврейская автономия в Биробиджане? И одна из главных причин была, это климат. То есть не может существовать небесный Иерусалим вместе с плохим климатом. Мало того, это должно быть на берегу моря, потому что между Израилем и Новым Иерусалимом должно быть прямое сообщение по воде. Никакой другой территории, подходящей под эти признаки, эзотерическая, Каббала. Мы говорим, что Новый Иерусалим должен состоять из 5 областей. И, например, что Запорожская область должна входить в Новый Иерусалим. Если мы уберем Запорожскую область, то остается 4 области. Давайте посмотрим, что Каббала говорит по поводу цифры 4. Это неустойчивое равновесие, агрессия и неспособность к развитию. И возьмите цифру 5, 5 областей. Это развитие, это гармония, это возможность самосовершенствования. Евреям нужно все-таки нужно передать Крым, то тогда Крым очень логично станет 6-й областью Нового Иерусалима. А что говорит цифра 6 в Каббале? Она говорит, 6 – это обретение вечного. Жить и существовать, и работать, разумеется. То есть эта территория с востока будет граничить с Донбассом. На севере у нее будут украинские области, а на западе будет Винницкая область, которая будет служить некоторым буфером между Новым Иерусалимом и в достаточной степени антисемитской. Мы говорим нет, не нужно. Никто не знает, что будет в ближайшие годы с Харьковской областью, с Киевской областью. Может быть, это зона большого конфликта между Россией и Украиной. Мы не знаем, на Западной Украине это будет Польша с Румынией, с Венгрией, или это будет что-то другое. Поэтому небесному Иерусалиму очень важное окружение, благоприятное окружение, добрососедское окружение со всех сторон украинскими областями, которые будут служить некоторой защитой этого этой территории, этого мира, конечно же, это будет помощь от миллиардеров Казахстана, России, от мультимиллионеров и миллиардеров выходцев из Азербайджана, из Армении, из Грузии, так назовем их горские евреи, правильно? Это будет помощь государства России, это будет помощь государства Германии, которая будет будет давать деньги, технологию и технику имущества этой стране. Это будет помощь Европейского центрального банка. Это будет помощь Банка Англии. Это будет помощь дома Ротшильдов. Это будет помощь всех европейских государств. В США, конечно, ожидается помощь от США как государства, от Федерального резерва, от сотен семейных фондов миллиардеров и мультимиллионеров. Ожидается помощь от Голливуда, от магнатов Голливуда. Ожидается помощь от таких мегакорпораций, как Apple, как Facebook, существовавшие до этого на этой территории. Это были в некотором роде далекие предки ашкеназов. Поэтому...
Последний вопрос, и, возможно, неожиданный для вас. С какими словами вы бы обратились к еврейскому народу, чтобы вдохновить его на новое свершение?
Непросто. Сейчас. Сара. Еврейской государственности за 70 лет построили мощное, современное и эффективное государство. На Украине мы должны пробежать это расстояние за 10 лет, иначе нас сомнут. Сделаем небесный Иерусалим.
Berkut presented a long list of world leaders, billionaires, and business people who would support the New Jerusalem project because they're either Jewish or very favorable to Jewry. And he demonstrated that this includes all the leaders of the world, Donald Trump, Putin, the Pope, the heads of Google, Facebook, etc. They're all very favorable to Jewry, so none of them would oppose this project. In fact, he demonstrated that there would be no leaders in the world who would oppose it because all the leaders of the world are very favorable to Jewry. Shimon ben Yochai stated that the best of the Gentiles deserves to be killed. He is the purported author of the Zohar. It was actually written by Moses de Leon. And Yochai was considered the Messiah, son of Joseph of his time. He is frequently quoted in the Talmud stating that Gentiles are beasts who deserve to be killed. It's very interesting. This New Jerusalem project seems to be the Jerusalem for the Ashkenazim, as opposed to the Sephardim, who evidently will maintain Israel. The Ashkenazim descend from Ukrainian and Russian Jews. Many of the people who live in Israel are descended or are Jews from Russia and Ukraine. Shekinah appears in the end to embrace Berkut. This is very symbolic in Kabbalah. Shekinah is considered the motherly figure who follows the Jews around the world, wraps them in her wings to protect them. And that's the imagery I see in my Kabbalistic analysis of what Berkut is presenting. The name Shekinah, the female aspect of God, starts with the letter Shin, which is represented by this hand symbol that rabbis use, that Leonard Nimoy adopted for his role as Spock in Star Trek. The letter Shin is very significant. It resembles the symbol on the Ukrainian flag. And so this symbolizes to those in the know, the Kabbalists, that Ukraine represents the New Jerusalem, the heavenly Jerusalem as it's called. When the Jews fled the Russian Empire to New York City, they were deliberately greeted by the Statue of Liberty, which also represents Shekinah. There was a poem written by a Sephardic Jewess welcoming the Jews to America. Again, Shekinah follows the Jews around the world. She is their guardian. She wraps them in her loving wings. So all of this symbolism appears in Berkut's presentation, whether he intended it or not. That woman represented the Statue of Liberty welcoming Jews to Ukraine in the same sense that the Statue of Liberty welcomed so many Jews to New York City. The letter Shin is composed of 3-letter vavs. And in Hebrew, letters are also numbers. They have numeric value. And the numeric value of vav is 6. So when a Kabbalist looks at the letter Shin, which is the first letter in the name of Shekinah, he or she sees 666, which is very symbolic in terms of the book of Revelation. The letter Shin is also composed of 4 yods, and yod has the numeric value of 10, which adds up to 40, plus the 18 of the 3 sixes, and the 300 of Shin itself all adds up to 358, which is the numeric value in Gematria of Mashiach, and it also is the numeric value of Nachash, the serpent. So the Messiah represents the serpent. Henry Ford, as I stated in the beginning, made a journey to try to end World War I, and he brought 2 Jews along with him on that journey, the famous journalist Hermann Bernstein and Razika Schwimmer, and he spoke to them on the peace ship. He wanted to end the war, and he went on a peace mission to Europe on what he called the peace ship. And while aboard this ship, he spoke to these 2 Jews who informed him that the Jews controlled the war. They could end it at any time they wanted, and they could prolong it for as long as they wanted. And I believe this is very relevant to what's happening in Ukraine, because this war is being dragged out to depopulate Ukraine, to kill off its breeding age males, to cause the exodus of Ukrainian women and their children. And this fits very conveniently with the Heavenly Jerusalem project. The New York Times reported on what Ford said in 1921. Henry Ford today told reporters the fundamental reason why, for the last 2 years, he has attacked the Jew in his weekly magazine, The Dearborn Independent. He said that the course of instruction on the Jew, which he intends to give the United States, will continue for 5 years. It was the Jews themselves that convinced me of the direct relation between the international Jew and war. In fact, they went out of their way to convince me, he said. You remember the effort we made to attract the attention of the world to the purpose of ending the war through the medium of the so-called peace ship in 1915. On that ship were 2 very prominent Jews. We had not been to sea 200 miles before these 2 Jews began telling me about the power of the Jewish race, how they controlled the world through their control of gold, and that the Jew, and no one but the Jew, could stop the war. I was reluctant to believe this, and said so, So they went into detail to tell me the means by which the Jew controlled the war, how they had the money, how they had cornered all the basic materials needed to fight the war, and all that. And they talked so long and so well that they convinced me. They said and they believed that the Jews had started the war, that they would continue it as long as they wished, and that until the Jews stopped the war, it could not be stopped. We were in mid-ocean, and I was so disgusted that I would have liked to have turned the ship back. When I got back to the United States, I still had in mind what the Jews had told me. In Europe, I looked about quite a bit, and I could see that a lot of the things the Jews had told me were so. Once at home, I set about investigating a bit, and the more I investigated, the more I found to substantiate what the Jews had told me. I determined that the situation should be made clear to the people of the United States through publicity. But do you think that I could get a newspaper to print it? Not on your life. It seemed that there was no newspaper in the United States that dared to print the truth. The funny thing that happened just at this juncture, an old chap in Dearborn came to my office and wanted to sell the local paper, the Dearborn Independent, a weekly newspaper. The thought came to me like a flash. Surely someplace in the United States there should be a publisher strong and courageous enough to tell the people the truth about the war, and if no one else will, I'll turn publisher myself, and I did. There was another article relevant to this. Herman Bernstein sued Henry Ford for revealing these facts and named 7 of the charges in the suit based on what Ford had alleged. Some of charges in suit. The Jews, he alleges, were falsely accused of the following offenses. 1. That leading members of the Jewish faith participated in the World War. 2. That in the middle of the war they switched their support to the Allies, selling out to the highest bidder, and that their price was the aid of the Allied nations in restoring Palestine to the Jewish people as a national home. 3. That they murdered or caused the murder of the Russian Tsar and his family. 4. That most of the dangerous and destructive theories of government abroad in the world are of Jewish origin. 5. That they have debased the professions, prostituted the arts, and degraded sports and corrupted commerce. 6. That they control and dominate the press, finance, resources, institutions, and politics of the United States and prostitute the same to unlawful and iniquitous purposes, and to their own aggrandizement and to the great injury of the civilized world. 7. That their alleged wealth and power as a race constitute a threat to mankind. I mention all of this because I think it's very relevant to what is now happening in the Third World War. I think it's also very important to, again, call attention to the fact that they are inaugurating the formation of the heavenly Jerusalem with the ethnic cleansing of Armenians in the same manner that they began to take Palestine, utilizing the slaughter of 1.5 million Armenians under the Young Turks in the Ottoman Empire in the First World War. And I would also point out the fact that after they were able to obtain the Balfour Declaration, as Ford indicated, in the middle of the war, switching allegiances from the Germans to the Americans in a quid pro quo deal, by means of which the Balfour Declaration was issued to Lord Rothschild on behalf of world Jewry in exchange for the Allies fighting for England to defeat the Germans and the Ottoman Turks, which handed Palestine over to Jewry. Jewry did not want to go to Palestine. Jewry may well not want to go to Ukraine. That was the purpose of World War II, was to force Jewry into Palestine. And something that may happen in World War III is that now that Saudi Arabia and Iran have become allies and under China, Israel may be attacked, or anti-Semitism may be fomented in Russia and the United States to force Jews into this heavenly Jerusalem, if things go according to their plans, as they apparently are. It takes a great deal of work and research to produce these videos. I would be very grateful to you if you would contribute financially to my work. You can find me at my website, CJBBooks.com. Beneath each of my book titles is a donation link. I would be very grateful to you if you were to contribute, and I'd like to thank those who already have. I will see you next time. Bye for now.